Alright, this video is part 2 in the stuff about lag and load times. This one is all about... wrong tool. Lag. What the heck is it? How does it work? Lag. How does it work? So in the last video I kind of explained how... lag worked. Maybe I should have done lag video first before loads. But, let me go ahead and get past this. Oh, I've got a bunch of breakpoints still on. Let's go ahead and... I still have it marked though, right? Okay, I'm gonna disable all this stuff that I don't need from the last video. Alright. Okay, so... there's V-blank down here. So, even though this is the picture, and we usually scan a frame from the top left going down, line by line, just like how you read a book. We usually think of a frame as starting on this blue line, which is the vertical blanking period, which is this part underneath. This is the time where the scanning beam in the television is making its way from the bottom to the top, and it has a lot of time to do that. The good thing is, when the TV is drawing the picture, here's the Super Nintendo. The picture processing unit in the Super Nintendo is telling the TV what to draw, and in doing that, there's video RAM, which holds all of the graphics and stuff. And there's a bus, which is just a connection between everything. The PPU is going to the TV, and the PPU needs to read the data from VRAM to be able to know how to draw that. So it's going to do this. It's going to read data from here. Now, because of that, if the Super Nintendo were to try to write something to VRAM, it's going to conflict with this. Only one thing can use the bus at the same time, or else there's a bus conflict, which is a bad thing, because then the data just gets all messed up, and bad things happen. So the SNES is barred off, for the most part, of accessing VRAM while the picture is being drawn. PPU has full access. That way it knows it's correct. During the V-blank period and during the H-blank period, which is on the sides, H-blank is very short, but the V-blank is really long. During that time, the PPU doesn't need to draw the picture. There's no picture to draw here. So PPU just lets go of video RAM. And at this point is when the Super Nintendo can start writing stuff to ROM. At least it can read if it wants to. But for the most part, during V-blank, the SNES can dump as much stuff in VRAM as it needs to for this frame. And then during the frame, the PPU reads that from VRAM. And it just alternates back and forth. The SNES has this little tiny bit of time to write all that stuff to VRAM, and then the PPU has all this time to draw the picture. You can see every little purple dot here on my event viewer tells me when the scanning beam was at that point, the SNES CPU did something. And all these purple dots are writes to VRAM. So you can see this is a bunch of VRAM. The green stuff is OAM, which is also relevant to the PPU, which has to do with sprites. So those are down there too. If there was palette data, CG RAM accesses, those would be down here also. So the CPU has this little bit of time to update all that. But otherwise, when the picture is being drawn, the scanning beam is going across. The CPU is also doing its own stuff. It can't access VRAM, but it can do everything else it needs to. And if, say, it wanted to write something to VRAM, what it can do is write to a little buffer, like in WorkRAM or something, where it has full access all the time. It can write stuff here while the PPU is doing this stuff, and then when the PPU is done, it can just dump everything into VRAM right away. That's usually a good way of doing it. But it can also do other things, like process physics, all the logic of the game, everything. And that's why there's some of these dots are showing up in the middle of the screen. It's because I also have other stuff turned on that shows that. And in particular, I have this one very special instruction. Let me go ahead and jump to that in the debugger. One very special instruction, which I have highlighted with this red dot, and that is this STZ10 instruction, which is just after this JSR, which is in this tight loop. This tiny tight loop is the game loop of Super Mario World. You can see this branch to 6B is right here, and it just does that. There's one JSR, which is the basically run the game routine. But you can see here that this instruction jumps here, and it will just sit in this loop for a very, very long time. In fact, here, if I can probably highlight that. Can I do that? There we go. These dots represent every time that instruction was executed. This is what I call the CPU is spinning. It's just waiting for VBlank. Like I said, the VBlank period, this blue line, is what we usually think of as the start of the frame, because there's something called an interrupt at that point, which isn't very important for this video, but basically the CPU gets a notification that says, hey, the frame started, you can do things now. And right here is just where it's waiting for that, because it did all the work it needed to. It has nothing else to do this frame. We don't want to run too much in the frame because we want the game to feel smooth and the same frame rate the entire time. So we will just wait for the next frame before we try to process everything. All of this, though, is taken up by physics calculations and every other gameplay logic stuff. And you can see that in this particular frame, I'd say about 2/3 of it was taken up by logic and calculations, and about 1/3 was just waiting. And as you could see, as I step through here, oh, that one went down a lot. Each frame has a different workload. So sometimes, like in this frame, it took a lot more. You can see as I'm moving here to the right, more of these Koopas are spawning in, so that might have something to do with it. But we go more, and that just means we have to wait less, and that's fine. And we keep going. This frame stopped here, so we had that much. This frame, that much. This frame, that much. All right, and we just keep going. And you can see, like, if I pause the game, like hit the start button to pause the game, you can see that there's not much for the CPU to do while the game is paused, because there's nothing to do. Like, no physics calculations, nothing. So, like, the entire frame is waiting because there's nothing to do. And then as soon as I unpause the game, it goes back to, oh, actually, you can't pause and unpause the game so quickly. Apparently, there's quite a buffer here. Okay, you know what? There we go. And in fact, I can just let that run. Let me make sure that the volume is low. And you can see as these Koopas move around, this kind of bumps up and down a lot because there's a different amount of stuff happening. If I despawn them, you can see, oh, as they despawn, there's less things to have to do. So now the CPU is waiting more. And they're like, this is just the entire time. You hit Yoshi, the game is paused right now because a text box is open and there's nothing to do when the game is paused. So there's a lot of waiting to do there. But as soon as the text box goes away, it comes back. And now if I go over to the Koopas again, it goes down. I put a Koopa in my mouth, and it goes up, because if a Koopa is in Yoshi's mouth, you don't have to process it. There's no physics, so the workload goes down. Oop, it goes up. So this is just the level here moves up and down all the time, all over the place. And if you run the Super Mario World practice cart, there's an option called the lagometer, which makes a little red dot appear on the screen. That red dot is measuring exactly where this cutoff is. That's exactly where that is coming from. So you may be wondering, well, we can pause the game to make the start of this like striping pattern, the weighting, way down here, or like, which is like all the way around the frame it wraps around. But what if it goes so far down that it like hits the bottom and goes past it? Let's see if sticking out Yoshi's tongue also does a lot of stuff. I think I killed too many of the Koopas. I can't get a lag frame here. Here. Easy option is just to die. Dead. Enter the level again. Alright. So we come over here. So we've got 8 Koopas loaded in. The game is almost struggling. 8 Koopas and Yoshi, so it's even worse than it was before. And then I'm going to stick out Yoshi's tongue. So now we're going to really go overboard. Eventually. Maybe I got lucky and didn't get a lag frame here. Oh, there. Oh, I skipped it. Right when I got it. Oh, that one's really close. It's basically no time at all. That one was really close. All right, here we go. That's an example. So basically, what happened is that... okay, this is kind of not a good example. It's so close to the blue line that it's hard to see. But we didn't start waiting until below the blue line, basically. So the game got the notification, hey, the frame is getting to start here. And then the game was able to notice, crap, there was so much stuff happening on that frame that we didn't finish all of the calculations. We're not ready, basically. We're not ready yet. The frame is here, ready to be drawn, but we're not ready. We didn't finish everything. And so really quickly, the game just gives up and it says, we didn't finish everything. We need more time. And so it returns immediately from the VBlank routine and continues on with all the game calculations it was doing. Now, in this case, it just barely got a lag frame, so it's starting to wait pretty quickly. But for these like 2 little lines right here, maybe I can get a better one. I don't think so. I think all these Koopas walked off the edge. Let me... why did that guy have to fall off the edge? Actually, you know what? Oh, of course. Sprite limitations. Why? Alright, whatever. But, yeah, the game gives up, and this is unfortunate that I keep running into Koopas that fall off edges, even though they're red. Alright, here we go. Okay, that's a better one. Here, now you can see a visible gap here. The game was calculating, doing stuff. VBlank's ready, blue line, start a frame, and then it's like, oh crap, we're not done yet. So it goes back. This little gap is it's still calculating, and then it finally gets to this part where it's waiting. But notice, here, I'm just going to advance the scan line just a little bit. Remember like that giant block of purple dots and green dots and everything that was here for uploading stuff to VRAM, like I said? Like it does this during VBlank. Well, we were in VBlank and it didn't get to do any of that. And that's because the game had already given up and it said, we're not going to put anything in VRAM this time. We're not going to update anything because we didn't finish the frame. And then basically what that means is when the PPU goes to draw stuff to the screen for this frame, it's the exact same stuff that was there in the last frame. Nothing changed because the SNES gave up on that frame. And that's lag. That's why everything is the same for 2 frames in a row, because the SNES didn't update anything. The PPU just draws the same thing two times in a row. And it can get, technically it can get even worse if you were to go around and it said, oh, we're not done yet, and then it goes around the frame and it's like, oh, we're still not done yet. You can get a double lag frame. It can go, it gets kind of ridiculous at that point, but you can get, you can have as many given up frames in a row. But most of the time, lag frames are just 1, because the developers of a video game try their best to make it not lag. They try to fit all of the execution into 1 frame if possible. Obviously, when there's a lot of stuff on screen, there's kind of like a sacrifice for it happening all the time. Maybe they're like, okay, 5% of the time it can happen, because if we were to try to not have it happen ever, it would require super efficient code, and we wouldn't be able to put 8 Koopas on the screen at the time. But that's just the way they did it. So we have lag frames. Now, you might think that so that's how lag frames work. That's why they happen. And here's why there's certain things, at least when it comes to Super Mario World speedruns, that's like, you can't say that doing something will cause a lag frame. You saw how crazy this thing moves up and down. Like, just because you see how those guys, they walk off the screen and they go up. But this line is like, every time I advance a frame, like, you can see this moves up and down. It's not in the same spot every time. Like, if I just run through this level, as I'm running, like, look at how much is bouncing up and down. And like, as things load, it goes down. We have certain enemies take more processing power than others. You have, like, those guys didn't seem to make it change much at all. Then you're like, go to the pipe, loads. You have things where if you interact with certain sprites, maybe sometimes they take a lot of execution time, but it's different when you hit them, like while they're thinking. So it's very, 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 very difficult to be able to like analyze how much frame is there, how much lag there's going to be in a frame. Now, there are some things that cause a certain amount of lag. So in this case, like when I hit a goal tape, there's nothing else going on. And it's going to be the same for every single goal tape ever. Basically. Mario's walking on the ground. That's the only thing that's happening. The game's calculating bonus stars. Bonus stars might do a little bit extra lag. I say a little extra lag, but a lag frame is when it actually does have to take an extra frame. What I should say is, like, it takes a little bit more execution time. And every single thing that the game has to do does contribute to execution time. So I got 1 bonus star. It has to know to draw the term bonus to the screen. It needs to be able to add 1 bonus star to my bonus. It needs to do that. It needs to calculate the number of seconds I took in this level and calculate the score. And that score calculation is going to be different depending on how many seconds were left. It's going to have to calculate all my points with doing that drum roll thing to point it to put all my points in there. It's going to take a different amount of time for each thing. But here's the thing. In a certain case like this, we have so many constraints on what's happening. Like, I can't control Mario at all. Mario's doing his own thing. Even if we had, like, the maximum possible thing happening, there's no way this is going to lag, because, like, look at it. It's all the way at the top. Of course, right now, the reason why this is jumping so much is because every time the colors, like, fade in a bit, the game has to calculate those colors. So that's why it goes down. But it's still not hitting the bottom. Now what it does when it does hit the bottom is when the game is calculating the fade in for the colors and the spotlight at the same time. So as I march through here, yeah. In fact, when the spotlight is going down, it's pretty much guaranteed that it's going to be lagging. It's basically a lag frame every time. Now, so in this case, I'm just checking. There's not really a frame where it's close. It's either a frame where it's definitely lag, like this is always going to lag because it's way past the bottom, or we only used up half the frame. So like this frame took an entire frame and 1/2 of a frame. It's never going to take a full 2 frames. Like there's nothing else that can happen here. If there was a case, oh, here's a case actually. Here's a good one. This is perfect. So in this particular frame, the spotlight was small enough that the end of the calculation happened right at the end of the frame. Not after it, but barely before it. We just on time, got to just barely finished this frame right before the interrupt happened. So you can see that there was barely any waiting going on here. You might be able to know that there's one thing in this game that causes a variable amount of execution time that's way more than a few scan lines, and that is the score. So keep that in mind, how little of time we had to wait there. I'm going to enter Yoshi's Island 2 again. And I'm also going to kill these Koopas so that they don't kill me. Let me open up a memory. Let me go to the score, which I don't remember where it is. I might have to go look that up. I think it's right here. If you don't remember where anything is, just do that until it changes. Is it this one? Nope. This one? Nope. You just mess with stuff until it works. This is the score is stored in like something weird. It's in like hex, but it's 3 bytes. There we go. I found it. All right, so I'm gonna give myself 0 points. I can give myself like 800 seconds too, so I don't die. Notice where this red line is, okay, or like where the top of the waiting period is. Okay. Now I'm gonna give myself the maximum number of points. Did you see how it went down? So that's 0 points, and that's the max. See how the game? So let's see if I can actually find where that gets read. Let me see. I'll put a breakpoint for reading that. All right. What was it? So we're gonna load that in. Oh wait, hold on. I may have. I think this is what I want actually. Because one of them is loading that into the status bar and one is actually calculating the score. Give me a moment. I think this is the routine that we want. Go there. One of these is calculating the score. Okay. And then we gotta find the RTS. Which actually here, I should just Why is that not? Hello. There we go. Get below the JSR here. There we go. Okay. I'm going to mark both of those. And I'm going to unmark this so those go away. I'm going to turn off the weighting for a second. Oops. I don't know why. I don't know. I'm trying to mark out where the start and the end of this happens, but I don't remember where exactly it happens each frame. Because this is showing up 6 little squares. It should only be. I wish I could double click that together. Maybe this is a different thing. Alright, hold on. I have the disassembly, and I should just here we go. This is where it is. It's a draw score, even though it's not drawing, it's calculating. Oh boy. Alright. That is the routine. Oh, okay. That makes more sense. It has this label that goes back up to the start. So that's confusing. Alright. Yeah, so I'm just going to have to just put that on there instead. That, and then, here, I'll just, there we go. I should have done this to start with. There we go. All right. Sorry about that. All right, but now every frame, also this is kind of confusing. Turn this off. Every frame, I don't want that to be a breakpoint. There we go. Every frame, this will mark off where's the other red dot? Why did it not show up? Why do I have to make that a breakpoint for it to show up? Oh, because I have that on. Never mind. All right, everything's good. Everything's good now. It shows me where this routine starts and where this routine ends. And when we have the maximum score, this routine starts here and ends here, which takes 21 lines. Well, even this one, 22 lines. 22 lines just to convert the score and draw it on screen. And if we put it to 0, let's go ahead and advance a few frames. There we go. That's kind of confusing. Let me skip a few lines forward. There we go. All right. This routine now starts here and ends here on scan line 1. So it takes 2 lines to run. So if you have a low score, it takes 1 line to draw the score, 2 lines to draw the score. If your score is the maximum, it takes 22 lines to draw the score. And the way the algorithm works is it subtracts each place 1 by 1. So it is the sum of the digits that actually determines how long the routine takes. So having 1 million is better than 999,990. That's just how it works. So remember that one frame I was talking about in the gold tape and the spotlight was going down and we finished just in time? Imagine if our score was just so much more that it caused it to take just 3 more lines longer to draw the score on the screen. We would have had an entire lag frame because of that. We would have had to do just that much more execution. But since we missed the V-blank notification, the interrupt, we had to wait all the way around before it hit the V-blank again before we could do the next frame. Which very much sucks, because even though there's nothing we're controlling in there, and you'd think it'd be very consistent, there's one thing left, and that's the score that also makes it maybe lag less or more. And this is also applicable to keyholes and basically everything. But what it is important to point out is that I'm trying to figure out, there it is again. What is important is that in an area where there's nothing, you can do something and it won't cause lag at all because you have all this extra time. You can do something even with maximum score right here. There's still so much time. There's no way you can lag it without like getting 8 Koopas to spawn. And it's the opposite too. If there's a screen or something where there's so much going on, like it lags so much that it goes past, and there's 0 chance of you being able to mitigate that lag, to be able to save that lag frame, then there's not a point to even trying, because like there's just always going to be lag frames. Nothing you can do about it. Just like the spotlight at the end of the thing, at the end of the level, like it's always going to lag when the spotlight's coming down and the colors are fading. There's nothing you do. It's always going to lag. Also, I like how Mario has a halo and is sliding. I must have deleted all his lives. But yeah, there's just... I feel like there's a lot of unknownness about the lag, or what's the word that I'm trying to think of? Not ignorance, but just not enough knowledge of what lag actually is and why it can happen. Yeah. So there are some laggy levels in this game. So like Sunken Ghost Ship or something. In fact, I'm going to practice card because it's easier. Where... Okay, so I can actually go to the level. I need to go to here and turn on my viewer thing. There we go. Alright. Let me just give an example. Alright, hold on. I gotta turn on this. I turned it off for a thing earlier. So you can see, like, as you go down, things spawn, it goes down. Every time this flickers is a lag frame because you just missed the V-blink, and so it just has to start waiting again, which causes the entire next frame to just be full of waiting. And so, but you can see, like, some of these, you miss it by just so much, and there's nothing you can really do about it. You can score, so, like, do you remember the amount of difference there was between 0 score and max score? So it was like 21 lines or something. The score isn't going to affect lag that takes more than 21 lag frames, 21 scan lines. So, like, in this instance, if this, say I had maximum score right now, it got to here before it started waiting. Wait, no, this one just got there just in time. I'm looking at the wrong frame. I need to stop this one in advance. There we go. Here, we're at line 241. If I were to subtract 21 from that, we'd be at line 220, which is up here, which is before the blue line. So that would have saved it. But if our lag frame started way down here, like really bad, then even saving all of that time with the scorer wouldn't do anything. The amount of execution time there is in a frame is a huge spectrum, but it gets converted to lag frames, which are discrete. And it's also not random, so it's all deterministic. Obviously, it's a lot easier to model it random, but it's just it's hard to kind of convey just how confusing and complex it can end up being. So that's why when it comes to, like, figuring out how much lag there is in a certain speedrun, there's not much you can do to, like, calculate that. You can't be like, oh, well, there's 5 Koopas on screen and a Yoshi and Mario, and he has star power and he's in this level with this score. That means there will be a lag frame every 3 seconds. Like, absolutely nothing like that. So that's why, for, like, if we're going to measure how much lag there is, we need to just get a bunch of data and then average it out. And even then, it's going to be annoying and not very accurate because, I don't know, the variance is pretty high that just taking the average every time could easily overshoot or undershoot what the actual value would be. I don't know. I'm rambling now. But that's all I wanted to talk about. That's what lag is. That's why it exists, and that's why it sucks. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.